we may be all these different states, but it's important for you to understand that the overall purpose of education right now, in the eyes of our government, and by our government, I mean all of it. So the federal government, all the way down to your state house, that is to turn out a workforce. Let me repeat that. The purpose of education in America, as it is currently constituted as an institution, is to produce a workforce. And you might think, well, that's yeah, but it's an educated workforce. Define that. Define educated. Yes, but educated in a way that the state thinks is appropriate for the workforce. So you have to think about, what kind of workforce do they want? Well, the kind that pays taxes without complaining about it. The kind that pays the taxes before they even get their income without complaining about it. The kind that would really prefer to be an employee with all the benefits and the goodies that come with that than be an entrepreneur, because then you get more taxes because you can force the company to take it from the employee, whereas the entrepreneur can be their own accountant or hire an accountant and do things separately, and they don't necessarily prepay with the same degree of regularity. Government doesn't like that. So think about it that way. What would be the incentive of the government to be involved in education at all in the first place? Because it wants a workforce to pay taxes that support the government. It seems really obvious once you see it. You kind of can't unsee it, but there you go. Now, for 100 years, it's been that way. It was the declared purpose and intention of it from all the way back to Dewey. You can look into the research and the history of it. I'm not saying anything that isn't true. No matter what other fancy decoration they put on helping children succeed in the workforce. Okay. But now it's been a global thing. You might have thought the UN is about keeping the peace. Right? It's like keeping peace, like, between countries so they don't go to war. But I bet you're not as familiar with UNESCO. And what you probably aren't aware of is that back in 1953, there was a meeting and representatives from lots of different countries got together, including the United States, to decide what schools should do the world over, what the whole point of education was. So I'm leading my show about curriculum with this because I want you to understand. So many people are still walking around thinking my school board chooses my curriculum, right? No. Well, certainly my state board of ed does, right? No. A little more, but no. Well, but then who's choosing it? Well, let's back up. What is curriculum? I already told you the purpose of schooling is to create a workforce that serves the state very well, very nicely. I mean, it happens to serve you too. That's a bonus, but really primarily so serve the state. So what then would curriculum be? What would you need to know if you were being groomed to be part of the workforce? Well, you would need to know what the state deems is important to know. And you would probably not be shown or taught anything they deemed unimportant. Well, now step back and make that a global project. What is a group of people getting together in this, very small group that for the whole world, how can they possibly know what all of these children need to know to be part of a workforce that doesn't yet exist? And that was the case 100 years ago and 50 years ago. And now it doesn't, 5 years ago, doesn't matter. They couldn't possibly know what jobs are going to exist, not exist. It's that never mind what the individuals want to do, are talented enough to do, etc. And yet they think they can know. And to the extent that they can't know, they're okay with that because they're just going to produce curriculum materials to guide the students, to teach them the things that, once they know them, they might be inclined to think that's all there is to know. Or they might at least be inclined to think that learning anything else would be just as arduous and boring as learning all this garbage. So what's the point? Yes, part of the point is to get them to think that the process of learning is just goal-oriented. Like, I got to get a job, I got to be employed, get a paycheck, move on. I really don't need to know anything else about anything that the government didn't decide I needed to know. And tragically, since the vast majority of us came up in the same system, we have our children and we just automatically buy into that notion of curriculum. Well, certainly the curriculum taught in the schools is the one that's appropriate for my child because the experts picked it, right? Experts at what? Experts at what, right? So you have a bunch of unelected bureaucrats deciding what the overall purpose of education should be, create a workforce. From that, they decide what this workforce theoretically needs to know and obviously needs to not pay any attention to because you can't teach everything, right? And we're going to standardize that. And then we'll standardize what achievement at learning those things is. And then we will empower and train the requisite sub-experts to go in and teach it, and so on down the line. Now, I've said many times on this channel that at one point in time in America, there was something called a knowledge-based curriculum. So even within all of what I just told you, there still was a notion that, kids coming out of school should know some things, not just be taught some things, but actually demonstrate that they know them before they're credentialed, before they get that high school diploma and go on to that college to be further credentialed. This is all about jobs, right? Well, I think that this workforce needs to make sure they can do a thing or two. And so we had a knowledge-based curriculum. Math, yeah, you need to know certain things in math. Got to be able to do it. Yeah, you need to know how to read because, got to be able to do it for the workforce. And it's sad to say this because I disagree with this whole premise that that's what education is for, but that was still a far sight better than deciding that education was an equity project and about social justice and not about knowledge acquisition for even working in the workforce. So in 1983, those of you who follow me all the time, and here she goes, 1983, they got rid of the knowledge-based curriculum. Yes, they did. They changed it to a standards-based curriculum. Standards, what does that mean? That sounds good. What would be wrong with standards? Well, because standards have more to do with coverage. It's what the student will be shown or taught, what the teacher or the school will cover in the curriculum. How you do that is all up to you. Okay. As a teacher, as a school, whatever, pick something as long as it aligns with, 3 CBA Q12 standard, whatever, that'll work for us. And who decides whether something does align with that? That's your best guess. I don't know who paid to develop the curriculum in the first place. Maybe they did it, but good luck finding out who to hold accountable for the standards alignment. But that's what that means. Whereas we all know what knows how to multiply 2 times 2. We all know that. We don't need a special expert to tell us that it aligns with a knowledge standard of, 2 times 2 equals 4. We don't need that. We can do that. So they've made the system super arcane, and we then think we need more experts to tell us what to do. And even the teachers feel like, well, this is changing every day. They keep adding new standards, and I'm just a teacher in the classroom. So I don't know. I guess I'll go to the curriculum developer and they'll tell me. They'll tell me what aligns. They'll tell me what to teach. And that's going to be my shortest distance, to being successful in my profession is just everybody's following somebody else. And so we went from having teachers who might have been subject matter experts because they were teaching to knowledge, and they didn't always do a great job then either, but they, better. And we could shift over to a professional educator who is really much more of an administrator. I mean, they're not a school administrator. They're a classroom administrator. They're a curriculum administrator in that they know what they're supposed to cover. And then they can go out and depending on what their school district puts out for resources or allows them to use, which could run the gamut. I mean, anything on the internet, it could be. And they can just pick. They can pick what's easiest. They can pick what they agree with. They can pick what their department head picked because that's a surefire way to not get fired or, discipline. They can pick what their best friend is using. They can go to teachers, pay teachers and go, well, that looks good. They're charging me money. It must be worth something. There is not some authority sitting at the school board saying you will use this textbook and you will use these books. They'll give them a list, maybe, but they don't pick the list. They're given the list by the schools, by the teachers, by teachers who got it from NGOs and other people, whatever. And all they do is say, yeah, that's fine. Does it align with standards? Because that's their only job. They work for the district. Does it align with the standards? And how do we have to pay for it? So if somebody comes and says, nope, you don't have to pay at all. It's totally free online. And we've been given it by an NGO, Bill and Melinda Gates, blah, blah, blah. We're getting money, Human Rights Council, blah, blah, blah. We need to do it. It fits into this standard, and this standard. School board didn't pick the standards. They just go, okay, if it fits with the standards and we don't have to pay for it, bonus. Oh, yes, you have to pay for it. It costs this much. Okay, now they're going to look at it more closely. And you might even get to look at it because they're going to have to spend money on it. If it involves hiring a third-party consultant to come in and either bring the materials or the applications or train the staff on how to teach the lessons, then they'll have to discuss it some more. Does it align with standards? Yes, it aligns with the sex ed standards of the blah, blah, blah decided in the committee of the last year. Okay, it does? All right. What's it going to cost? Do we have it in the budget? Okay, fine. Does anybody have any public comment? Yes, this is terrible. Oh, you're a crazy person. Shut up. I mean, this is how the decisions get made. So people come to me all the time. My school board will get rid of this. Good luck. They don't really choose. They're not magic experts at curriculum selection, and they don't go and handpick every book and then tell the teachers what to teach. It's not how it works. They're about they talk about, what they're going to spend and making sure that the teachers are teaching to the standards. And if the superintendent says, yes, we are, if the principals are telling the superintendent, yes, we are, 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, okay, we defer. We're just elected functionaries, and, you say they are, we're not here. They hire the superintendent for the purpose of making that decision. They will listen almost all the time. So I had to set the stage there because so often it's like, well, let's just get rid of this. It's not that simple. If you get rid of one thing, I'll show you a discrete lesson, for example. I'll hypothesize where the teacher got it. And then you might say, well, they'll tell them they can't use it anymore. School boards don't necessarily have that power. They don't have police power. They don't have judicial power. They don't have any kind of punitive power except with the superintendent. And if somebody wastes money or does something wrong with money, if somebody violates a safety code that puts them in a position of liability, they do have control over that. But they can't just tell a teacher, you can't teach this book. That has to go up the food chain to people with a lot more power, the principal, the superintendent, and even all the way up to the governor, and somebody might have to make a law. But it just doesn't really work like that. If they're buying the book, they'll say, we're not going to buy the book anymore. And then swoops the NGO to buy it for them. So you've not really done anything. So that sets the stage for you. Where does curriculum come from and what's the current project of education? A lot of it is tied to money and tied to this project of we need a workforce that's going to go out and pay taxes and not complain about it. So here we have what they did. ASP.NET, that is the Associated Schools Network, was founded in 1953 when UNESCO launched a project called the SCHEME, interesting choice of words, of Coordinated Experimental Activities in Education for Living in a World Community. So if you infer from that our schools since 1953 have been a giant petri dish and our children have been lab rats, you would be correct. You would be correct. A lot of what people talk about in terms of pedagogy and, this is how we teach and this is our methodology, it's an experiment. How's it going? How's it going, you guys? Think it's going well? Yeah, no. So with the participation of 33 secondary schools and 16 member states, united around the UNESCO founding principle that since wars began in the minds of men and women, which men and women? Oh, right. People who had lots of power centralized in one place with guns. Okay, let me continue. It is in the minds of men and women that the defenses of peace must be constructed. That word is very important. We live in a time of what's called social constructivism, right? Where people working in our schools and our universities genuinely believe not just that we construct our social mores and things like that, but we literally construct our reality. It's not really real. It's all constructed. That's how you can just be whatever you want because you're constructing it. It doesn't just exist. This is very important philosophically for you to understand. These words are not chosen by accident. All right. The underlying belief of the network, which has 12,000 member schools worldwide, is that they can work together in support of peace, intercultural dialogue and understanding, sustainable development, and quality education. ASP.NET works towards Sustainable Development Goals 4, Target 7, by empowering schools to drive innovation for global citizenship. What do you have to get rid of for American children to believe they're citizens of the globe and not the nation? What do you think? Right? You kind of have to take a dig at the country as a country, don't you? It'd be pretty hard to raise patriotic little kids. And I don't mean patriotic like America's the best that ever was and everybody else sucks. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the idea of America, the founding principles, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, pretty important and unique. It's actually exceptional on the planet and in human history. And I think I'd like to preserve and protect it. So I'm going to treat it as special, and we're going to teach our children that it is special and not take a dump all over it and say that we really shouldn't have sovereignty and we should sign on to all kinds of international global treaties that destroy our sovereignty and render us not America anymore. Global citizenship is big with curriculum, all the way down to the granular level. How does it work? ASP.NET is a global network of millions of students, teachers, principals, and wider school communities. They're bringing in that word a lot. Community schools, you're going to hear a lot about that, who are committed to promoting and transmitting UNESCO's values. Wait, what happened to American values? What, UNESCO's values? Did you guys vote for that? I didn't vote for that. What happened to our democracy? Remember our democracy? The one that was in danger? Yeah, from this. It's not really in danger because you don't want porn in the library, okay? It's in danger because there are a group of people on the other side of the ocean, or maybe in lower Manhattan, who think that they can sit and decide what values your children should learn. And you weren't asked. And a team at UNESCO headquarters oversees the network's international coordination, and together with national coordinators, who you also did not elect, and member schools develop global projects, initiatives, and campaigns. Did you know anything about this? Most of you probably didn't. ASP.NET collaborates with UNESCO's regional and field offices, as well as UNESCO networks such as chairs, geoparks, biosphere reserves, and cultural heritage sites, among other partners to support national coordinators and blah, blah, blah. What are their goals? Schools as laboratories of ideas. I kind of thought that was settled. I don't think we need a laboratory of ideas about, how at least our society should run. But I forgot. We're not a society anymore. We're not a country anymore. We're part of this world, this global citizenship project. So of course they need to use our kids and our schools that we are paying for with American tax dollars as a laboratory for their ideas, not yours and not mine. Empowering schools across the world to drive innovation and transformation and act as living laboratories for global citizenship, not a project I signed on to. When I had children, I did not sign on to this. Did you? Global networking and collaboration, strengthening international cooperation and collaboration, knowledge sharing, and partnerships between countries and schools. This is a long-winded way of saying stealing your data. Capacity building, developing institutional and human capacities for innovative teaching and participatory learning, particularly through whole school approaches. Also a big fancy way of saying community schooling and spreading out into the private sector through school choice to increase the capacity for UNESCO to reach more kids. That's literally what they mean. Transformative education, lots of different, not just in the public schools, and whole school approaches, community school. That means they're going to do healthcare, all the things inside the school for quality improvement. Quality of what, though? Quality of what? And increasing uptake within and beyond. This is about their advocacy, increasing uptake of their ideas. So all of this is to say they are working on the project of social engineering around the world, using our children as lab rats for their ideas, trying to change their brains and change the way they think and make them see themselves not as citizens of the United States of America, but as citizens of the world according to UNESCO, whatever their definition of a citizen is. That's very high level. And now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some examples of what that looks like down at the district level. Like, what does it look like? And what does it sound like when this reaches the level of state policy, school policy, and then curriculum?